Yeah, which absolutely links back to the confidence piece. I know you mentioned just then, you were talking about some of the male, more senior males that gave you support, you know, as you were moving through your career journey.
Yeah.
Were there any women that inspired you from that? I mean, we talked about your mum, but, you know, professionally, you know, you said obviously that there weren't a lot, but, you know, I just thought I'd ask if there was one or two that sprung to mind that helped.
Yeah, it was not so much in those corporate days. There just really weren't very many women. They did, you know, there was a sort of like internal women supporting each other program kind of thing. But I just thought, it's not really my thing. I don't need that. But when I started the business, it was still really quite early days for women, you know, female entrepreneurs or women who are entrepreneurs. In fact, I was called a mumpreneur, which I really didn't like, and I'm quite pleased that seems to have faded, you know, from language these days. But in those days, there were, you know, it was the sort of the Janine Ellis's and the Carolyn, you know, Creswell from Carmen's and Marianne doing T2. There weren't a lot of women doing it, but there were some really great networks, and I did, you know, lean on those, you know, multitude of women's networks for support, absolutely, and entrepreneurial networks in general.
Yeah, great, thank you. During these challenging times, obviously you mentioned some of those support networks, but do you have any, I guess, you know, talking about the meditation and things like that you encourage other women to do? Do you yourself have any mottos or principles or guiding principles or values that you can share that might help you to overcome any challenges that you might have faced in the past or even now?
I mean, in terms of I am getting better and better at self-care. So, you know, keeping myself in a, you know, as grounded and peaceful a state as possible. And so that's things like just, you know, eating well, exercising, getting plenty of sleep, regular massage, you know, those kind of things make a real difference. And then there is something about, you know, having been around for a while where I have become more relaxed about life and work in general. You know, I remind myself that I am doing this because I want to do this. You know, I could choose to do something else otherwise. I often remind myself that whatever this drama of the moment is, it is not the end of the world. My dad always used to say, you know, will you even remember this in 5 years? So I often sort of play that back to myself. You know, I probably won't even remember this in 5 years. I think they're the key sorts of things that I tell myself. I just try and remove myself a little from, you know, the intense, because I'm very emotional and might, you know, seem quite composed now, but you know, I am very emotional, and I like that about myself. And it can sometimes mean, you know, I have very intense feelings of fear about a situation or whatever it is. So just to, you know, in that sort of meditative practice of, you know, remove yourself so you become the observer rather than being in the world of, you know, the whirlwind. That's a really useful tool for me.
Yeah, great, thank you. This is a bit of a question that is a bit random. It's just based on what you've said. You've talked about your mum and how she inspired you, but you also just mentioned your dad there. And I guess if we're looking to, you know, if gender equality is the business of everyone, not just women, is there anything you can share with us around how your dad might have encouraged or inspired you, if you're happy to share or not?
Yeah. I could go into a lot of analysis here, but just to keep it, you know, to keep it simple, my father, on the one hand, was very encouraging of my mum, and of me, in the sense of equality, you know, careers, and he really mentored her. And he was 20 years older than her.
Right, interesting.
So there was this really interesting dynamic where, on the one hand, she was a capable career woman, and I was always expected to do something, you know, career-wise. But on the other hand, there was this dynamic that he was kind of the head of the house.
Right.
So for me, that was in some ways quite good preparation for that corporate environment.
Yeah, right.
And it had me, come at it from a very sort of driven and quite competitive place, which the downside of that was I worked, I think harder than I needed to, and I gave myself a bit of a tough time.
Yeah.
But I guess at the end of it all, I think, feminine values, which men and women can have feminine values and characteristics and masculine characteristics. Feminine values, I think of, the ones around, kindness and being supportive and wanting people to work together, and those kind of values I feel are worth encouraging, because they just will lead to life being better for everyone ultimately. And encouraging them in both men and women, encouraging women to reach the maturity levels that allow them to feel confident to connect with those kind of values and not have to be so tough on the one hand. And then, of course, there are structural pieces that also need a little firmer attention. But from my perspective, it really is about us all moving to greater places of maturity. And to me, that is around win-win and care, ultimately.
Definitely. Thank you. This question probably links in a little bit to what you've just been talking about, but I got a quote from Gloria Steinem, world-renowned feminist, journalist, and founder of M Magazine back in the day. So she said once that the story of women's struggle for equality belongs to no single feminist, nor to any one organisation, but to the collective efforts of all who care about human rights. So as a society, what do you think can be done to overcome this challenge? How do we make it everyone's responsibility?
I mean, I think we are.
Yeah.
I think we are. Things like the way Australia responded during COVID, for me, were really heartening in the sense of, I looked at our willingness to, suffer to some extent for the better of everyone within Australia. Our willingness to stay at home and to close businesses and to do all these things that, very few other countries, the people and governments of very few other countries did. And it really made me feel that we are a very sophisticated country when it comes to, caring about others. And gave me, a lot of pride and hope in terms of how we are.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about negotiation. Obviously, we all have to negotiate, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, in business circles or even in your personal life, everyone has to do it at some point. Interesting statistics. So there's a book that's been written, it's called Women Don't Ask, Negotiation and the Gender Divide, by Linda Babcock and Lara Lashaver. And within that book, they say 20% of adult women, or 22 million people, say that they never negotiate, even though they recognise there's an opportunity to do so and that it is an appropriate time to negotiate. So I was just thinking, wow, that's a pretty huge statistic. So firstly, do you think that's an accurate representation of what's actually going on out there in the world?
I wonder whether women may make that mean, literal sort of overt wheeling and dealing, because any woman, for starters, who's a mother is constantly negotiating or has a partner or a housemate. I mean, we're all constantly, if we never negotiated, we would be, I don't know, under the blanket at home, I think. So I think actually maybe it's around how it's defined. I think a lot of women are constantly negotiating, and in fact becoming a parent is really great training in negotiation.
Yeah, so maybe not recognising that there is a lot of those smaller opportunities in life to be able to do. So, yeah.
And look, having said that though, my experience of women in business is that they have, tended, when I was in that environment, to be less likely to ask for things, to be less likely to be comfortable in a negotiation, and I speak for myself as well, to relate to it as something to do with conflict and sort of an aggressive thing, and that's, it's kind of out of character, or to relate to it as just to not be huge champions of themselves, to kind of hope that someone else might notice. So I do think that there's been some of that, which comes partly culturally around, you're meant to be nice and all of that stuff, and maybe just internally in terms of generally wanting peace as a woman. Those two things can lead to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think can be done to change that, I guess, to encourage or empower women to feel more confident to engage in negotiations, whether they be personally or professionally?
Look, for me, training is the thing that makes the biggest difference, because you don't know what you don't know. And until you've done some training in negotiation skills, you don't see that, in fact, it can be quite a systematic planning exercise with a series of steps that isn't just this kind of vague sort of conversation between two people where you may be overwhelmed or you might have to be mean to them, or all of those concerns.
So I guess having a bit of a something to it, just I guess building the skills and being more, that's going to enable you to feel more confident to go out and do it.
Absolutely. I think understanding that, in fact, that it is a skill set. It isn't. I think there can also be I think I used to think that, you were either that way or you weren't, something like it was just a natural thing you were born with. So to be just clear about there's a structure, a process, a set of skills, it just takes away that concern.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I have one final question for you. If you could go back in time to when you started your career, the first job that you had that you were talking about, what would your number one piece of advice be to your younger self?
So much advice, and I don't know that I would have listened. Look, I mean, if I go all the way back, I actually think that the advice would have been around, what do you really love, Corinne? Even if it's a bit scary or maybe you're not getting the support, have a crack at that. And I may have ended up in a very different place, like I may have been a singer or a psychologist or something quite different from, I guess, where I ended up, which is more aligned with what my family did. So for those, well, and look, having said that, that's something I'm thinking about at the moment. So I was going to say, for those who haven't yet decided, but in fact it's an ongoing choice in life, isn't it? And whether you're 25 or 55, the beauty of us living longer is you can still choose to retrain and do something different. And I think that's what I will end up doing.
Great, thank you. Well, look, thank you for your time today. It's been really insightful to have a chat with you and understand your drivers and your inspiration for doing things. So again, really appreciate your time, but I'm thinking now it might be time for a cup of tea. What do you think?
Absolutely, yes.
Thanks.
I totally agree. Thanks, Natasha.